Miss Knock.
Exactly.
There it is. Nice. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Administrative Committee meeting on Monday, April 28th. To my left is Drew Davis. To my right is Gina Truccio. And let's dive into the regular agenda. First is going to be the approval of the Administrative Committee March 24th, 2025 minutes. I had one correction on those when I was looking through them. It listed that it was us three up here, but on the minutes it said that Julia and Sandra were up here, if that's important. Okay, cool. I think Sandra and Julia were probably in the audience, but because I was like, I think I chaired that committee meeting when I was like looking through the notes.
It was us stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, so thanks, Lori. Great. Any other questions about the minutes?
Nope.
Okay,
We're good.
cool. Approval. Item number 2, request for waiver for on-premises consumption within 300 feet of a school or church per Idaho code. With Lori, hello.
So you've heard me explain these recently a lot.
Several.
So Karma Indian Cuisine transferred ownership. So they also have to transfer alcohol license. So for the audience, no Idaho code prohibits consumption of alcohol within 300 feet of any church, public school, or place of worship without a waiver from the city council. And so, again, while they already served alcohol there once before, the waiver goes with the business, not the location. So they are within 300 feet of Real Life. Real Life turned in a support letter, as did the private school, Jubilee School. And yeah, I'm happy to answer questions.
Great. Drew?
Yeah, so I mean, we've done this for a lot of times this year. I don't know how many times, but they got approval from everybody. Everything's fine. It's been there in place. It's just changed in ownership. So it's very routine.
Yes.
Nothing out of the ordinary. That's what I read.
Yeah.
Just wanted to
Yep.
verify. So I have no reservations. So
Gina?
I appreciate your explanation because that is kind of not a gray area, but one that maybe someone didn't understand if they hadn't sat through the last 4 or 5 with us. I agree that there is no real material stuff here. So I think maybe approval of on consent. Can we do consent on this?
Yes.
Mr. Belknap?
Yeah.
It's a
and-
suggestion.
No, I like that suggestion. And I think that, we, did the movie theater, which I knew was a new premises, either last meeting or the meeting before. And then we also did the transference of the Coulter's Creek. So yeah, this has all been very familiar as of late. So yeah.
And I think it's good that obviously we have to, it's law, right, to do it, but I think it's good that owners are going through the steps on all of these to make sure that it's checking the boxes from a state perspective. And if there wasn't, there was something to talk about, but there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I say consent.
Yeah. Let's put it on consent. Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Congratulations. Yeah. Item number 3, Deacon Avenue pavement rehabilitation and city utility improvements. A memorandum of agreement with Scott. Hello, Scott.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So this project started out as a U of I led project. It's one of their deferred maintenance programs that they have. And we got involved when we were part of the plan review last fall. We found out that what they were planning on doing was a complete replacement of the roadway on top of utilities that we have there that are 100 years plus old. So it was a excellent opportunity to replace those while we could. I mean, some of those utilities we have in our records of 1890. So yeah.
Great condition.
Yeah. So rough idea of the vicinity map here. We're on Deacon Avenue between Sweet Avenue and University Avenue. Sweet Avenue there on the south and University Avenue on the north. North arrow looking to the right. And you can kind of see the green
Transit center on the bottom left.
transit center on the bottom left. Yes. Yeah.
And all those new construction just off the.
All the new construction off to the left, to the south of this. So yeah, the green is roughly where the existing sewer, the blue is the existing water, and then the purple is the existing storm that is out there. And all the utilities are smaller than current regulations. All the stuff's in our comprehensive plan for upgrade to larger sizes, larger diameter pipes. So
Can you remind me, without looking on the GIS, I can't ever remember, but what's the red dot again? What are the red dots mean? Hydrants. Okay, that's okay.
Yep. So again, kind of a view from Sweet Avenue looking north up Deacon Avenue. So overview of this. So the U of I scope of this project is basically full road replacement. So the road, curb and gutter, sidewalks, all the ADA ramps, the retaining walls, just a full gut of the whole roadway through there. A lot of alligator cracking, bad subgrade. It's just time for the road and sidewalks to replace. A lot of the sidewalks have completely deteriorated. It's right here between a lot of the frats and sororities and everything. A lot of students walking on it. So then part of our scope here is to replace water, sewer, storm mains, fire hydrants, manholes, catch basins. I mean, everything out there is old, really old. So last fall, while they were going through their design, we had then teamed up with JEB, their designer, to do our portion for the utilities. Once that was finished up, the university has their general contractor for this is McKinstry. This is one of those that's they hire the general contractor construction manager as part of the project that's involved through the whole thing. So on April 4th, they gave us a proposal for our portion of it. For the entire project, they had it at $961,031 for the both construction and contract administration, so inspection and administration for it. The University of Idaho's portion is the $605,394, and the City of Moscow's portion, the $355,637,000. And the independent engineer's estimate that we had for this was right at $355,000, pretty close. And then even our own city one, based upon current values, was right, I think, around like $354,000. So it's just right there in that same area. But that's kind of what you get when you have more of these general contractor construction managers, because they're involved through the whole process. So staff's recommendation is to approve the memorandum of agreement between the City of Moscow and the University of Idaho by providing them a lump sum payment in the amount of $355,637,000, or provide staff with further direction.
Nice. Thank you, Scott. Gina or Drew?
Did we have this in our capital improvement budget?
I don't believe that this was in the forecasted 5-year outlook.
It was way off. It was off.
No, but it's an opportunity. I mean, it's if we were doing any city project to do a road replacement, we would always do the utilities, even if they are not, as long as replacement is necessary or they're nearing the end of their life.
Okay.
Regardless of whether utilities are on the CIP while we have the roadway deconstructed, that's the time for us to do it. So this is pretty common for us to include utility. It's just this section of road wasn't on our CIP. U of I got kind of a large slug of deferred maintenance funding, so they're trying to do a
So
bunch
it
of
is
pavement
deferred
improvement
maintenance.
projects.
Okay.
And so they chose this as a segment that they felt needed to be improved. So us doing utilities makes really the most sense right at this point in time. This is MOU is a little bit of it's a unique situation where actually the state's bidding and administering the project kind of on behalf of the university. And so we're just committing to provide this funding, and then the state will essentially, underneath their contract, complete the work on behalf of the city to replace our utilities. So we don't have a direct contractual relationship. It's actually, we're going to provide our funding to the university. University is going to provide that funding to the state to fill in that gap. So it's a kind of a three partnership here with three entities where the state didn't want to contract with us directly to add it. They wanted to only interact with the university. So we'll be providing our funding to the university, who will then provide it to the state.
Well, I do think the timing and the ability to be a partner in this situation is great. So I'm in great support of it.
I just wanted to make sure. So I know it's lump sum payment, and so from this point, since there's three agencies kind of working together, if they come across anything, RFI or anything, what is that? Is there a percentage for us to do? Is it like 5% that we're gonna have to cover more, or is it just we give them this and no matter what the cost comes back, they kind of got to deal with it, or where are we sitting with that?
There wasn't any discussion on contingency for additional funds, and then any of the change order related stuff is really handled on their end. We're just providing the lump sum portion for this. I'm sure if there's negotiations that have to come out of it.
I would say underneath the MOU, we're not obligating ourselves to any change order amounts. If something
Now we're talking.
remarkably unusual is discovered in the course of the project, we certainly will talk with the university and the state about whether those, the city should participate in that. But at this point in time, underneath this MOU, we're providing a one-time payment, and there's no other obligations to the city.
Great.
Okay.
I like that.
That's how I
Nice.
view it.
Okay.
Nice.
Can I ask one
Yeah,
more?
absolutely.
Not, I mean, everything sounds great. I've just always wanted to see what one of these old like infrastructure looked like from before 1900. Can we get? I just love to see
Mhm.
a picture if when they're working in there. It would be
I'm sure that when they get down there, we'll be taking lots of pictures.
Yeah.
Some of the clay tile from the 1890s, assuming that's still the old clay tile.
right.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll even wear a hard hat out there and go look at it. But let me know. So
Yeah, and I think one couple of questions on my end. You started the presentation by mentioning that this had kind of been in the works, and when I was going through the packet, it did look like the former mayor signed off on this in February of 2019, along with. And so I'm just curious, like, this has been on the radar for a little while, or this was under the liability, one of the attachments.
Attachments.
That's a that's a standard agreement that we entered into with the university to address indemnification and liability between the two agencies
Okay.
for any joint projects the city
Great.
and university
Thank you.
engage in. So that was just included as an attachment to the MOU with the university, but that was a prior agreement that only related to language we both parties could agree to regarding liability insurance and projects that we jointly engage in.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Bill. And then also on the scope of the project, and I'm sorry if I missed this, start and completion, any timeline here?
Starting today and completing.
When it's completed?
I mean, they're trying to complete it before students get back.
Sure,
So they
sure.
were more interested in getting in ahead than falling behind.
Sure.
I mean, the students right now really know the university and get around as opposed to the new students coming back in the fall. So
Great. Cool.
they'd like
Do
to
you-
get everything completed before rush and everything.
do you see, are they going to be making, not that it, and because we're only doing utility, but for sidewalk, are they kind of improving like right of ways there for like walkability, or do we have no idea kind of what?
It's just basically upgrade the existing infrastructure out there to meet all the newest ADA standards and everything. So
Cool.
Great. Feel good?
I absolutely do.
I like it.
Great. Should we go on consent?
I think this would be fine.
I think that would be great.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott.
thank you.
Awesome. All right. Item number 4, South Moscow Business Park, SOMO, development and monumentation agreements with Bob. Hi, Bob.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So let's talk about the South Moscow Business Park development and monumentation agreements. I know that the preliminary plat has already been approved by council back in October 24. But for anybody that doesn't know where we're talking about, it is south of the South Fork Palouse River, and it is directly adjacent to the new US 95 highway project. Real quickly, monumentation agreement. These are pretty standard agreements. I think we've approved a lot of these before in the past. This particular monumentation agreement, there's nothing in it that's different from the ones that we normally do. They're pretty cookie cutter. They are agreements that are just required to be able to plat. It's a state law in order to be able to plat a property without setting the pins first. You enter into these agreements and you can do all the construction without disrupting your pins. The development agreement, much of the development agreements go through stuff that's already in city code, but it kind of just reiterates it and kind of solidifies it in an agreement. This development agreement does have a few provisions that are outside of the norm of most developments. So 4 of those provisions are listed here. There is a provision to lay out an agreement between the city of Moscow and the developer for the reimbursement of proportionate share fee for a signal at the intersection of what will become Somo Drive and US 95. The total cost for that will be $64,000. The city will be reimbursed $4,285 as lot sell per lot. Also in the agreement is some development participation. This is money that the city will provide to the developer to upsize the water main that's going to be built in the through the property. The developer is required to build the water main through their property, but in order to make it big enough to serve future development adjacent to the adjacent property and complete some looping within the system, the city provides some money to pay for some upsizing of the water main that wouldn't necessarily be required just to serve the developer's property. Most developments give parkland dedication. I'm not going to go too much into the land portion of the parkland dedication, but in order to satisfy city code for parkland dedication, the developer is also going to kick in $4,050 for to make up for some additional parkland dedication that isn't going to be dedicated. And finally, there is a deferment of some public improvements. There's a water line that was required to be run through one of the lots that will be run to the adjacent property that allows that adjacent property to be developed with water line looping through the property. That water main will be able to be deferred if the contractor or the developer posts the security ahead of time, and then they'll be able to sell and build that lot without actually constructing that water main. Our recommendation is approval of both the monumentation agreement and the development agreement for the South Moscow Business Park, often referred to as SOMO.
Great. Thank you. Drew, Regina?
I do, will you give us a general, or have they decided where the parkland's going to be on the site?
They have, Mike will go through
our next item.
the plat a little bit more,
Okay.
and you'll be able to see that a little bit more. For brevity's sake, we didn't want to double up on
Anticipation.
discussions.
Okay, well,
It's coming. I'm just kidding.
I see no reason not to approve this.
Yeah.
I like monumentation agreements too. They're exciting to me.
Drew?
Amen. Yeah.
All right, great. Move to approve, go on consent? Yes. Okay. Which leads really nicely, thank you, Bob, into item number 5. Good afternoon, Mike.
Hi,
This is
Mike.
going to be SOMO Edition Final Plat.
Yes.
Well, good afternoon. So this is the SOMO Edition Final Plat Review. So Bob went over the location of the property, but as you can see, this is an aerial. So the property is outlined in red. Current city limits boundary is the green dash line. So you've got SEL located here. This is Old 95. A few years outdated imagery, but this will be the new US 95 heading north-south there. So a little bit of background. The SOMO Edition is 29.48 acres. A preliminary plat to create 15 lots with an average lot size of 1.77 acres. And October 7th of last year, the council approved the SOMO Edition preliminary plat with 2 conditions. The first one pertained to some detailed stormwater discharge analysis that needed to be completed. And then the second was ITD's access. So applicant shall gain access approval through ITD and complete any necessary mitigation for the connection of SOMO Drive to the highway system. Then January 21st of this year, the applicant submitted the final subdivision plat to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the council. And this is the final plat that was submitted. So you can see US 95 right away located here. This is SOMO Drive, extends to the eastern property boundary. And then this is the parkland dedication that was located along the south fork of the Palouse River, located here. So that's all almost entirely within the floodplain. There's 2 pathways that were dedicated as well. And so One, this is a stormwater detention pond located in the northeast corner of the property, and then there's another smaller detention pond pretty much at the entrance of Somo Drive and US 95. And so this will be the new intersection located here of Old 95 and new US 95, as well as Somo Drive. So this is one of the pathways, and then a water line that Bob was talking about in the prior presentation will extend down to the Jensen property located here, as well as that shared use path, as well as access drive to the stormwater detention pond. Eventually, maybe we'll have a pathway that extends along the South Fork of the Palouse River. That was the idea behind the parkland dedication. So there could be a future pathway, and that would provide connection to that pathway. So just a closer view of the western portion of the subdivision, and then the eastern portion. So the commission did review the final plat at the regular meeting. It occurred March 28th of this year, and they recommended approval to City Council. Staff's recommendation that the committee recommend approval of the Somo Addition final plat with the condition that the applicant shall gain access approval from the Idaho Transportation Department and complete any necessary mitigation for the connection of Somo Drive to the highway system. And so ITD is requiring that we have a signed development agreement before they'll sign off on the access. And so this is the reason why we're carrying this condition forward, but it's anticipated that we should receive approval here shortly after the development agreement's initiated. Certainly be able to answer any questions you have on this.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Drew or Gina?
I don't have any questions. I like the parkland location. I think that could be a really nice part of that.
Yeah, at that intersection where we are coming into that, is that stop sign? Is there going to be a southbound turning lane to go, like turning into it? Is it stoplight? What's
There will be. Yeah, there'll be a future signalized intersection at that location. That's the impetus behind
Right.
the contribution from the applicant towards the future construction of that signalized intersection. But right now it'll be stop controlled just from Somo Drive and Old 95 onto the new 95.
That answers all my questions.
Great.
Somo Drive's a collector street,
Yeah.
so it'll be bike lanes on both sides. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and I being council liaison for P&Z, I saw this a couple weeks ago, and I think that 14-minute meeting that they had to approve this. So they were undoubtedly enthusiastically on board to continue to move it forward. So it's exciting. And I don't have any further questions now, having been, pretty privy to a bunch through even P&Z. Recommend for approval, Somo. And should we put it on consent, or should we have full council weigh in, since it is?
So final plats we've generally been placing on consent recently because all the discretionary functions are
It's all
done.
there,
Once you
yeah.
get through the preliminary plat, all the conditions have been imposed. It's really just a pro forma review to make sure the plat's consistent with what the council approved.
Okay.
So given this one's pretty straightforward, I'd recommend to go on consent.
Let's do that.
Agree.
Consent.
Thank you, Mike.
great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Nice. All right. Item number 6. Item number 6, Moscow Chamber of Commerce Visitor and Tourism Services Agreement Renewal with Bill. Hello.
Okay. Hello. Hello there.
I don't know if we've given you a formal greeting this afternoon,
So
so
that's all right.
this was ample time.
So the city has been a supporter and has funded services that the chamber, the Moscow Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center has provided to the city and to the community for many years. We formalized that partnership in a formal agreement for services just under 3 years ago. That agreement will be coming up to expire later this year. We thought this was a good opportunity to renew the agreement. So essentially, it's largely in the same shape and form of what existed previously. The only one notable change is that underneath the agreement previously, the chamber was obligated to organize and hold 3 downtown events per year. What's going to be changing is one of those events, which I think has been historically Camp Moscow-Juana's happened in June. The chamber will be taking over the administration and organizing of the Art Walk events. And so that will become kind of that June event for them. And then they're also required to have no less than one quarterly event, Art Walk event underneath this agreement. So we'll be kind of transitioning that program from the city to the chamber. So that'll be an enhanced service that the chamber will be providing. The compensation underneath the agreement is going to remain consistent. It's just following our 3% annual escalator, so there's no change in fee. And the services will be remarkably the same, except for the recognition of the chamber taking over the Art Walk program, having that as one of the big downtown events in June, and then doing their quarterly Art Walk events as well.
Gina?
Yeah, I think this has been great. Art Walk's a great event. I think the staff that have been involved from a city perspective have done a great job, and I think and the commission do a wonderful job. I just feel for programming and with all the above reasons that we've talked about, this makes good sense to me, and
Right.
it's not a reflection on like anything from staff or anything. It's just a great. I think this is a great partnership to increase bandwidth.
And as the council is aware, we have gone through some staffing reductions due to some financial tightening of the city's budget. And so we had a full-time arts assistant position that has not been filled. We've been providing backup support from other departments, and this was one of those programs that we thought if we could partner with the chamber to do that, that would take some of the load off the arts department, art staff. So the art staff of one now. And so this is, I think, a great partnership between us and the chamber to ensure that that program continues, but also to help alleviate some of that load off our remaining art staff.
That was my follow-on to your question, Drew. I agree. It has nothing to do with the staff's performance because the staff of one is doing a good job.
Oh, great.
But so what is the city's involvement in Art Walk look like then? Is it still the same? It's just the chamber's kind of
We
running
could participate. Yeah, so it'll look dramatically different. It'll be branded. It'll be their event. We will not have any role in it unless we want to participate if we want to have, we'll facilitate the street closure and all
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
things, but essentially it'll become a chamber
Okay.
event, not a city event.
All right.
Great. And to that end, Bill, and I was doing a little bit of research and kind of looking up, and I saw that, so this contract is going to be 21,855 starting in November with 3% moving forward, right? And when we started the other 3-year contract, of which is expiring in November, it was at 20. Is that right? About 20,000?
Yeah, so it's just moved that 3%
Okay.
per year, every year. And so this is just that next 3% step.
Great. And appreciating all that the chamber does and how it does, contribute to the liveliness and enjoyability of Moscow. And who knows where we'll be in 3 years, but, would there be ever a possibility of maybe bumping that up to 4% if they do kind of hit the home run with, with Art Walk, with, yeah. Shut you off guard on that one. All right. I know.
Yeah, I mean, the chamber uses this funding to leverage as matching fund for the state tourism grants that they
Great.
receive. And I know it's well in excess of 100,000 per year. So this provides a significant meets a need for them to help match those grant funds. Certainly, we could take a look at enhanced programming. Generally, 3% should be more than adequate to cover general inflationary cost increases they might experience.
Great. Just trying to advocate and trying to see what could be there in the, in the who knows what so future. But I do appreciate this agreement and recommend for approval.
Completely.
Yeah.
And I think consent.
Consent.
Cool. Thank you, Bill.
Perfect.
Glad I didn't ask for 10. Item number 7. Bill, you're not going very far. The renewal of the Intermodal Transit Center lease with Smart Transit.
Oh, wow.
So this is another agreement. So many people may not be aware, but the city owns the Intermodal Transit Center located on Railroad Street on the edge of the University of Idaho campus. We obtained a federal grant for about $1.6 million to construct that facility. And there are 2 tenants of the building. So the university's Park and Transportation Services occupies half of the building, and then Smart Transit also occupies a large portion of the building. That lease agreement was coming up to expire at the end of this year. But they reached out and expressed a interest in leasing or adding an additional adjacent office space to their lease. So there was an office that was off the hall. I think PEP was one of the occupants of that space at
Yeah.
that time, and they've indicated desire to incorporate that additional office space into their lease. So we are updating this a little bit sooner than we would have. So the lease does add that additional roughly 120 square feet of that office space. The compensation increases just at the same per square foot rate that they were paying previously. To add that additional space, and then it will continue. And this has essentially a 5-year term going out to 2030. And it also has that annual inflationary increase in the lease amount. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
They've been jonesing to use that office since the time of PEP.
Oh.
So, and I don't think they have, because I think it's been kind of weird space for a while. So to have them actually formalize this is a good thing.
And we're working with them. They want to add a door that will actually go
into
into
the
their
back.
adjacent space so that it
Awesome.
flows into their space. They're going to fund that. They have some grant funding to be able to add that. So our facilities folks are working with them to be able to help integrate that. But no, if they could use it, city does not have any identified use for that office at this point in time.
And no questions, pretty straightforward. So
Likewise.
consent, I think.
Sounds
Sounds
good to
great.
me.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Let's keep it going.
All right.
Item number 8, proposed repeal of Moscow City Code, Title 9, Chapter 10, Moscow Daycare Ordinance.
As the council is likely aware, the Idaho legislature passed 2 bills this year, House Bill 243 and House Bill 312, related to daycare facilities. House Bill 243 eliminated provision within Idaho code that allowed local jurisdictions to regulate and license daycare facilities. I think there were 8 or 9 across the state that chose to do that. Otherwise, if a local jurisdiction did not choose to regulate daycare, then the state Idaho Department of Health and Welfare would be the licensing agency for daycare facilities. So with the legislature passing that, Chapter 10 of Title 9 was our daycare regulations, so we are in need of repealing those. This would repeal that chapter to be effective July 1st, 2025. That's when the legislation is effective and the state officially takes over jurisdiction over daycare facilities. So this is just in preparation for that. We already have licensed all of our daycare facilities for the year. So we do that every spring. So typically by the end of March, all of those have been renewed, improved, and issued for the year. So those facilities will be working on processing to move into the state system. I think the way they have it set up is they're just accepting our license with no cost. And then when they come up and expire next year, then they'll go through the full state licensing program. Providers, the actual individuals that work in daycare facilities, those expire periodically through the course of the year. We'll continue to issue licenses until about the end of May, and I think starting in June, then we'll probably be referring people to go get licensed with the state, just because our code is in force in effect and the state's is not until July 1. But there is a time period for going through background checks, so we don't want to have people apply for us, still be hung up in background, and then we cannot complete and issue their license. The state's working on transitioning their licenses to the state system as well. So we'll make that transition. Usually it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get that background approved. So we think starting June 1st, we'll be able to complete and issue license of anybody who applies up to that point. From there on, they'll work directly with the state. So state, we've reached out and talked to District 2 just to get a sense of if that would work well for them. They think that's a great plan moving forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
What are the substantive changes where we were stricter than the state?
Can I chime in on that one?
Please.
I mean, reading through the packet, there's 15 pages of lines that are struck through.
Okay, so maybe we should talk about this at a regular.
But if you're looking at just kind of what the differences, so the ratios are a little bit different. So the number of staff members per child, depending upon age, they're less. We were only really slightly more restrictive in our prior comparison to our ratios to the state's prior ratios. We were slightly more restrictive, not significantly. But the state modified the ratios. Actually, House Bill 243 started off with no ratios. Daycare facility determines their ratios, posts it, and then parents make their informed choice. The ratios were pushed back into the final bill, but they are slightly lessened from what existed previously. So again, so the ratios are going to be slightly less. The frequency of our licensing was more frequent than the states. And then we had a long list of disqualifying offenses that were more exhaustive than the states. So that'd be daycare providers or facility operators that maybe had some sort of criminal offense or some other disqualifying offense. Ours was a little bit more extensive. There's a few other areas, but they still have disqualifying offenses, just ours were more exhaustive.
Other questions? I got a comment. To me, this is like the biggest government overreach on a state level possible. But elections are coming again soon, so I'm just they need to stop. But for now, we'll proceed with this. So
Go ahead, Bryce.
Sure. Okay. To that end, and I appreciate the follow up on that one, Bill. And yeah, just for the record, and like I said, and all of this is public information for those avid viewers at home. If they want to go through our website and see our agenda and see our packet. Yeah, there were 15 pages of code that each line was struck through for this repeal. And I know that some will probably be grateful for this deregulation. However, while reading this, I had knots in my stomach seeing it the whole time. And knowing how this state legislation could and potentially will harm kids and children. And it's unfortunate that, that we're at this stage, but we're at this stage. And I do have a question. I mildly apologize for the bluntness of it, but I'm taking this as a learning opportunity. What if we voted no? Like in the capacity, like on the right, like
Our code would have no force in effect.
Okay.
So we could not legally enforce our code. So we don't repeal that chapter. The chapter would sit there. We wouldn't have legal authority to enforce it.
okay. Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that you do that. I'm
No,
just in a curious sense of
it would sit there and would be of no force in effect.
All right. Thank you, Bill.
Well, I think this should go on regular agenda, and I'm not in favor of any kind of recommendation as far as approval or not. We don't have a choice, but I would like to have it before the whole council. so they
Yeah,
can
and it's an
understand.
ordinance, so it has to go on regular agenda.
And
Oh, right on.
I think I agree with that recommendation to go towards council with no recommendation.
get your popcorn. And my comments are light today. They won't be next.
Yeah,
council.
I can tell that's going to be a thing. I completely agree with your stand. I really do. I think this is it's an abomination. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now.
So we'll move it to
Sort
council and with no recommendation.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
And we look forward to hearing your presentation again, Bill.
Thank you.
Item number 9, proposed repeal of Moscow City Code, Title 10, Chapter 1, Section 1 through 16.
So this is another legislative, or I guess, response to legislation. This session, the Idaho legislature passed House Bill 270. That one actually it wasn't effective July 1st. It was an emergency to be effective on March 26th when signed. And it amended Idaho Code Section 18-411-6, the indecent exposure section of state law. It more broadly defined what is considered to be indecent exposure. I won't read, I'll spare you from reading through that. But it does define indecent exposure just much more broadly than the city's current code does. Because of that, our codes can be oftentimes at times more restrictive. We cannot be less restrictive than state law. So in this instance, prosecution of incidents related to this would be done underneath state law. And so the city attorney felt it would be appropriate for us to repeal our section that relates to indecent exposure. So that's all that this is doing, is just repealing that individual section, and then we would be abiding by state law moving forward.
I defer to my same comments. I wear a baseball hat. I'm afraid that it'll be indecent exposure, but yeah, that's what I'm at. So.
I'm just trying to be provocative up here. Without that. Gina?
Write it.
I don't really have anything constructive to say.
Yeah, and as you recall, the origin of our public nudity section was related to the topless car wash that happened in town many years ago, which led to us defining a bunch of terms. And so at this point, we feel repealing our section is the best course of action.
And was it 2003? That,
I have to go,
It's not, I mean,
let's see.
I can relook at it, but when it goes to council as well.
Was it
Looks
that
like it
far
could have been
back?
2002.
Okay.
Looking at the definition of when it was amended, it does appear that it was ordinance 2002-13 on July 15th of 2002, but I have to go back and verify, but that's the notation in city code.
Thank you, Bill.
And it was when I just started here. I do recall that.
Welcome. Do we want to do the same thing that we did on item 8 and take it to full council? We'll take,
Yeah, it's an ordinance, so that's
Oh, with
going
no
on our agenda.
recommendation.
Yeah,
no recommendation.
perfect.
Great. Thank you, Bill.
You bet. Thank
Are you gonna
you.
wear a hat that day?
I'll wear a stocking cap.
I might have to wear a hat.
Anything else this afternoon?
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
Great. Let's adjourn. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.